You're very welcome back to Thursday's Off the Ball. Daithi Regan is on the line, primarily, as always, to talk hurling. But Daithi, you're a proud Offaly man and a keen hurler, a keen golfer. Let's start that again there, JP. We won't even start that again. Daithi, a keen golfer, too keen, I'm worried about this weekend with the captain's prize coming up. But obviously, I'd imagine you were incredibly proud of what Shane Lowry achieved.
Yeah, I think like everybody was, it was... We regularly this time of the year have a lot of momentous sporting occasions on TV. You know, the later and latter end of the championships we get to, there's stuff to savour. But you know, I remember watching Harrington win his majors, and as an Irish sports supporter and a golf supporter, it was just magnificent watching it. It's when it's somebody that's pretty parochial, and you know the family, and you know the dad pretty well and stuff like that, that it becomes very, very personal. So we had a great weekend. We had a great day on Sunday. We gathered in town in Tullamore on Sunday for around 1:30, and we had a really brilliant evening. And it was, I left it at 7 o'clock pretty much as soon as it was over, and I haven't been out the door since. But I believe it's been absolutely extraordinary in Clara. I manage a hurling team, and we were playing Clara under 15s on Monday evening. And my selector and myself, we drove in, and the pitch is one end of town, and we said we'd take a drive up through the town. At 7:15 on Monday, there was two guys standing outside the chipper with two bag of chips each, and I'd say they didn't know whether they were holding golf bags or chip bags. And a friend of mine was in the pub that evening, and he said it's the first time he can ever remember at 4 o'clock that evening he went into the pub and there was guys asleep all over the place at 4 o'clock that evening. But that's what sport does, isn't it? That's why it's phenomenal. And it's because he's such a lovely, sincere, genuine fella. I mean, this guy, when he wins something big, he celebrates the way a lot of Irish people do. He goes out and he has the crack, and he goes in the beer, and friends of his for years that he knew as kids go with him. And yeah, it's one of them great stories, tremendous story. And no, I wasn't out. I didn't partake in any of it, but the older you get, the more of an effect it has. But just to enjoy it last Sunday, that was good enough for me, to be honest. Yeah,
we were saying that on Golf Weekly, all right, that it was almost when Shane Lowry thought about the celebrations, he thought, well, what would we do if Offaly won the All-Ireland? We go to the Boar's Head. We'd have the proper homecoming down in Clara that night, and he just sort of followed that pattern, and it served him well. It looked like it was an incredible couple of days. I know you've got the captain's prize this weekend. I'm a bit worried because you're covering Tipperary against Wexford for us on Sunday, so I hope it doesn't go too well for you. We're going to chat to you about that game on Sunday, and we'll preview it on the radio tomorrow night. I want to talk to you about Kilkenny Limerick, though, on Saturday evening, 6 o'clock throw-in at Croke Park in the first of the hurling semi-finals. And I think everybody sees this as a pretty mouth-watering clash, because Limerick, in many ways, it's felt, are the new Kilkenny. And when you read some of the quotes and talking this year about the physicality that they've added to their game, and just as well the style we've seen for them, particularly in that league game against Kilkenny, where they have these bursts of 10-15 minutes that when they're on, they can just be absolutely devastating and kill a team off. Like, am I building this Limerick team up too much?
Oh, I don't think so, no. I happen to agree with all of that. I and many others, it's not a case of building this Limerick team up. I don't think we've been building them. I think they've built themselves up by nature of their displays and their victories and the manner of their victories, and these bursts like you talk about, which when sustained for even longer periods as they were against Tipperary, they just consume teams and you can't live with it. And probably the one team most ideally suited to take them on are actually Kilkenny. But I don't think we're bigging Limerick up at all. I think what we do is when we have comments and we have conversations like we regularly do and other contributors to your show, and we talk about what we've seen from particular teams and games, I don't think you can do anything other than eulogise Limerick, because they've won an All-Ireland superbly. Their performances since then, albeit against Limerick, against Cork down in the park, Limerick Gaelic grounds, and against Tipperary in that kind of non-event, led us to believe that there's chinks there. And of course there is. There's nobody should or can ever suggest that Limerick or anybody else is unbeatable. What we can say is when they have these sustained bursts and when they're playing very well, they're nigh on unbeatable. But Kilkenny are the one team for me, and the reason I say that is because of this. In all the great years with Kilkenny, everybody travelled to watch them train, and everybody around the country asked, what's the secret, what's the secret? What are they doing different to everybody else? So thousands went to watch them training, and they came away from it and said, I can't believe it. I watched Kilkenny train. Jesus, they do the same drills as us. What they were doing was the intensity. And Brian Cody basically paraphrased everything by saying, it's work rate. And when Kilkenny bring work rate, like they did to Cork and eventually broke Cork down, they'll bring it this weekend, and he'll set out to stop those patterns that Limerick weave, and he'll try to stop these 10-minute, 15-minute bursts. And that's what they'll do. They'll predicate everything on absolute hard work.
Tommy Walsh was on OTBAM this morning, and Tommy, I think, has always been consistent since he started in punditry. He feels that intensity has to start with the forwards, that you can't let the opposition defenders come out with the ball. And he was making the point that what Kilkenny need to do is hammer the hammer, that they need to get 3 forwards this weekend who'll hammer that Limerick half-forward line of Kyle Hayes, Garrod Hegarty and Tom Morrissey. From what you've seen of Kilkenny this season, do they have those 3 players that can do that?
Oh, I have absolutely no doubt that they'll do it. They'll do it for the simple reason Brian Cody is their manager. So they'll go out with no other mindset. It brings me back. I love looking at Cody's career. I'm around long enough to have seen from when he was there from the start and look at what he's done with these teams. What you must factor in here is his ability as a manager and a coach to extract from his players maximum attention to detail on the field. Now, that's not always the pretty side of things. If you remember when Cork were playing great hurling in the early noughties, 3, 4, 5, with the O'Connors, with the likes of Sean O'Halpine, with, Gardner, all of these players that Cork had back then, and the speed that they brought in Shawnee McGrath was predicated on a carrying game and an overlapping game. Kilkenny got them in an All-Ireland final, and pundits at the time suspected that Cork were going to go on and do 3 in a row. Kilkenny beat them, and they actually conceded the puck out, which Donal Logue was happy to go short with. They were happy to allow it. And what they did was they funneled back, and every line seemed to funnel back. And every Cork player, what they did then was they attacked every Cork player in numbers, like you've suggested. And they'll do the same the weekend. And they must do it because, like Cork a bit then, Limerick build from the back. And they like to play heads-up hurling. But if you have someone coming at you and someone coming at the side, it tends to force your clearances. And I witnessed Limerick this year been forced to do that. And they were average against Cork. When Cork got to grips with them and fronted up. So expect Kilkenny to hurl with this manic intensity the weekend. From number 15 all the way back. You have to attack it. You have to attack it in numbers. There has to be a first, a second and a third tackler hitting, and I think this is going to be incredibly physical. And you can take a team out of its comfort zone if it's a thing you can do it, and sustaining it. Sustaining it is the key.
Kieran Carey, the Limerick great, was on the hurling show with Shane Stapleton earlier. He was talking about where he feels maybe the winning and losing of the game will be for Kilkenny.
I think Brian Cody will earmark too many players because Limerick have too many good players. So where do you start? But interesting listening to Ryan there. And I believe myself, if Deegan, Paddy Walsh, Padraig Walsh and Buckley, if they do tend to follow the 3 boys, they're going to make a monumental mistake. Because Limerick's strongest line by a country mile at the moment is the full forward line. And they will thrive on space and grass. And if they're given space and grass, they will hurt you. No, I'm not saying for the 3 boys to be headless and follow the boys out, but definitely you need to have some bit of a shape and hang 2 back there to mind the house. Definitely Limerick, without a doubt, will have a bit of concern about Finlay and Walter Walsh if he comes on. And, Kilkenny can play both ways. I totally agree with that. And they could get a lot of joy going route 1. And if Walter Walsh is introduced, he's a huge man. Finlay's a huge man. Looking at TJ Reid the last day, 10 points from frees, but you could have still very easily given him the man of the match. So as I said, the structure, the Kilkenny kind of go with number 1 and number 2 are the discipline enough to implement it for the hour. I think that's going to be huge from. If they are, I would give them a great chance. But if they're not disciplined and how they're set up, I think Limerick could hurt them. Possibly Limerick will target Paul Murphy, Hugh Laura and Jory Holland, going by the last match against Cork. So they'll probably see a few weaklings there, and definitely 5, 6 and 7 follow 10, 11 and 12 of Limerick. That's going to expose the full backline.
Former Limerick hurler Kieran Kerry there on the hurling show with Shane Stapleton. You can check that out every Thursday lunchtime on offtheball.com on OTB Sports Radio, and if you missed it, it's up on offtheball.com now. Talking about Kilkenny being able to play two ways there and maybe going that direct route of getting quick ball in high towards Colin Fennelly, and Fennelly can be devastating and has been devastating for club and county at times this season. Would the Limerick full-back line relish that? Is that what they want Kilkenny to do?
Well, the Limerick full-back line are tough players, every single one of them. So I don't think they're going to fear who's in there. Colin Fennelly is a very good full forward, and he'll thrive on quick ball out in front of him. He's got a great turn of pace, etc. So if you look at the last day, Kilkenny's performance really in the forward line revolved around some of the older timers. Wally, when he came on in the second half, TJ Reid, some of his touches were sublime. Richie Hogan in the first half in particular, and up to the point that he was substituted, and Colin Fennelly. So they've not gone away. Where I probably wouldn't agree totally in relation to Kilkenny's strategy the weekend is this. Brian Cody has come up against different formations over the years. Galway, who had an awful lot of movement back in 2012, 2015, and he tried to move at one stage in the Drawn All-Ireland final against Galway. What he did was, Tommy Walsh was back full back at one stage. They picked a player, they picked the Galway forward, and they decided beforehand that each specific Kilkenny player, no matter where a Galway player goes, so you had JJ maybe out centre back, you had Tommy Walsh was back in full back, and they got torn asunder. Stuff like that Brian Cody learns from. So what Kilkenny will do the weekend is actually very simple, and it's not, I would argue, what Kieran says. The Kilkenny full back line will mark man for man, and Paul Murphy will not be out left half back. If he's right corner back, that's where he'll stay, and he'll take whoever is in on him. And if it's Mulcahy or Casey or whoever else it is moves out the field, he will stay in his corner and he'll pick up whoever goes there. Now, there's an added value to this. There's an awful lot of talk about Limerick's bench and the depth of their bench. I watched Limerick empty the depth of their bench against Cork, and they replaced 5 forwards. If you see Limerick having to replace 3 forwards the weekend, they're in trouble. And the reason they're in trouble is because if the patterns aren't been woven and they're not opening Kilkenny up, then you see substitutions. If you see substitutions, Kilkenny defenders are on top. And I guarantee you, if Kilkenny can sustain the momentum and the physicality and this manic intensity, and I mean manic intensity that they have to bring and they will bring, if they can break 3 Limerick forwards, you're then bringing 3 new guys in to this intensity that they've probably not been subjected to all year. So it's one thing to say you've got depth and strength on your bench. It's a good thing when it comes to picking the team. But if you've got to replace 4 or 5 of your starting forwards during the game, it's very difficult for 4 or 5 guys to come in and all hit form as well. So Kilkenny can play both ways. Kilkenny will keep it simple the weekend, and every player going out will know his job.
You don't think there's any possibility that Cody goes with a sweeper?
I don't expect he will. No. The only time Brian Cody ends up with a spare man is if his opposition is doing the same thing. It's not the way he plays it. You've got to know the history of the man and the history of the way they play. Brian Cody, number one, believes that this team, if they hurl well, are good enough to beat Limerick. And his players are going to believe it. And that's not predicated on we keep ourselves solid for 15 minutes by dropping somebody back. It's not the way he plays it. If Limerick end up dropping someone back and they're playing with 5 forwards, well, automatically that could be Deegan or whoever that sits. But he will sit him on the D then. And that's a logical, practical, pragmatic thing to do if he's left with a spare player. But Cody will not go out and play with 5 forwards and confuse Limerick. I would be astounded if it happens. He's never done it before, and he won't do it this weekend.
That ability that Limerick have, that Kilkenny-esque ability of putting together these devastating spells, like Cody will have seen his own Kilkenny team do it time and time again. Is there a way of spotting that early and preventing it from Cody's point of view, or if Limerick hit that patch, is it just a suck it and see and hope that you keep them to maybe 1-3, 1-4 rather than scoring 2-6 or 2-7?
That's a really good question. And I go back to what I say. Will he notice it? He's noticed it. He knows what they bring. He'll have forensically dissected Limerick and the movement and the patterns and the clearances and the angles and the timing of the Limerick runs, from the goalkeeper striking a puck out to the movement that's taking place, be it Galan or Garage or Hegarty, whoever else it is. The movement is taking place before the ball is struck, and it's all coordinated, and it's preordained, and it's rehearsed, and it's superb. And when you watch them, so you've got to be, as a defender, cognizant of the man that you're marking, and I'm talking about dark arts here being employed. You've got to have a little hold of an attacker's shorts or jersey or hurl when a goalkeeper is pucking it out 90 yards down the field to slow the run down, because when you initiate a sprint to a ball, you take something out of the defender, you've got a half a yard ahead of him, and that's what Limerick do. So it all boils back down to one thing, and it's so simple from Brian Cody's perspective, and it's this: it's hard work, it's honesty, and it's integrity, and they'll have worked on it, and they'll get in their faces, and it'll be to sustain it, to break Limerick.
And have you seen enough from Kilkenny? Sorry, Di, have you seen enough from Kilkenny in this year's championship to suggest that those 6 defenders have the street smarts to do it? Like, a lot of these aren't the great names of before. Like, these are players still making their way in the game.
Yes, because I understand the culture of Kilkenny. And I understand, I'm long enough looking at Kilkenny and understanding the culture of Brian Cody and those that play under him. Yes, they will bring it, and yes, they will sustain it. Is it good enough to win the game? I don't know. Can Limerick be broken? I've seen enough of Limerick, and I've eulogised them from seeing them last year. They were my tip from the out this year. But I've seen enough of Limerick this year, particularly in the Cork game, to know that system can be broken. And I would factor that Kilkenny, quicker than anybody else, playing in the manner and the culture of their manager, have the ability to do it. Limerick are superb, but Kilkenny have the ability to break them.
Are you still predicting a Limerick win?
Yeah, I'm still predicting a Limerick win, because I still think they're superb. But I think they'll be brought to the precipice the weekend, and no one better. But I just think that they're in the best place I've seen defending champions in, aside from Kilkenny in their absolute heyday. I think they are better. I thought they were better than Kilkenny at this stage last year, and I fancied them to win it last year, and they barely got over the line. I think they're better this year. I think Kilkenny will bring everything, but I think when it comes to scoring and space and opening it up, there's only so much you can bring for so long to stop it. That's not to say if Kilkenny get in and break up the rhythm early that they can't do it. I suspect Limerick will win it.
All right, Daithi, great stuff. Best of luck in the captain's prize. There's a stage in Clara. They can get down to Burr pretty quickly, I'm sure, for the celebrations, but make sure you're in Croke Park on Sunday. We're going to talk tip against Wexford. We'll have plenty of time for build-up on that on Sunday and on tomorrow night's show. Great stuff as always from Daithi Regan.
Cheers, guys.